I'm good. How about you? Discombobulated. I have a lot going on.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
Okay.
Son's in Washington, D.C. 13 years old on a class trip. Which is all. Very somber.
I'm doing good. Yourself? Good. Waiting on the live stream.
That's, I like it.
Doing
Doing it.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah. That's what he was doing there.
All right, good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting. I want to welcome everyone in attendance and on our live stream. First, we're going to call Pastor Jerome Cash from Peachland Baptist Church to do our invocation.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight. I'm going to ask that you bow your heads with me as we pray. Father, you tell us in your word to be still and to know that you are God. And I pray in these moments of silence that we will remember that. And that, Lord, that we will know that it's not about who we are. It's about who you are. And it's about whose we are. I thank you for these men and women who faithfully serve our county. I pray, God, your blessings upon them. I pray, God, tonight as they conduct the business of our county, that you will cause them to do it in such a way that it'll be pleasing to you. And that, Father, you will give them wisdom and discernment and discretion to do the things that are right for the community of Anson and, Lord, for the citizens of this wonderful county. We thank you, Father, for taking care of us and blessing us, and ask, Father, that you now will lead and guide and direct, and that everything that is thought and said and done will be done to bring honor and glory to your name, and that, Father, we'll give you the praise in advance for it, because it's in the precious name of Jesus Christ, our Savior, that we ask it. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor Cash. All right. Let me read our ethics statement here. So, in accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matter coming before the board? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any undue participation in the particular matter involved. So, are there any conflicts tonight with the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Commissioner Ellaby, second by Commissioner Leary. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to open up. We have a public hearing tonight, and this public hearing is going to be a little bit different than the ones we've had in the past. This is going to be a quasi-judicial public hearing. I'm not the one to define what that means, but our attorney and our planning director can tell you. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to enter into the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Mims, second by Commissioner Little Reed. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Addison?
So while we wait for it to boot up, I would like to
say thank you to the applicants. It's been a long process to get here. You know, when they submitted their application, it was originally back in June 2024, so it's taken us quite some time to get here, so I appreciate their patience while the county sorts some things out in regards to the ordinance. But now that we're up and running, we'll just jump right into it. So this is a special use permit for a solar energy system level 3. It's identified as 25-0002. So as Chairman Cardle alluded to, it's been quite some time we've had a quasi-judicial hearing. So just to give you a quick breakdown, in regards to special use permits, there can be conditions tied to it, but they do need to relate to making sure the project conforms with the ordinance. So it can't just be any condition, and the applicant must agree to it. As we go through it, and more so during their presentation, they're going to present some evidence between the applicants and their sworn witnesses regarding findings of fact. As a county and commissioners, you're looking to make sure that their application meets these findings of facts and is agreeable with how they're written in the ordinance. Afterwards, the board will be able to deliberate and take action, and it's just a simple majority. And from there, we'll issue a findings and conclusion. Okay, so really to jump into the meat of it, like I said, this is a Class A special use permit. The decision rests with the Board of Commissioners, and when we open it up for a public hearing, if a person has standing, they're able to speak. If they don't, they can speak at the pleasure of the board. So, the project, like I said, it's for a solar energy system, level 3. It's on a approximately 72-acre parcel. They'll only be utilizing about 34 of those acres to develop a 4.99 or 5 megawatt facility. This is just a quick breakdown. Like it just goes over everything I've already said. You know, 5 megawatt facility, tracking solar panels, approximate location is approximately 3250 Highway 109 North. It's near the intersection of 109 North and Winfrey Road. So just some general other considerations regarding that region of the county or that parcel. It is slightly outside the town of Wadesboro, and that region really is a blend of zoning designations and a blend of existing land uses, predominantly silviculture or forestry, but there is a little bit of industry and some residential uses mixed in as well. And this gives a better example of kind of where the facility is, and also we have maps here in the boardroom. So this gives you an indication as to what I was saying. There's a blend of zoning designations in the area. Again, this is on the easel for those here in the audience, but it is a blend of zoning uses. And that's just a more simplified parcel aerial imagery. As I was saying, it's about 72 acres. They're only looking to put solar panels on that western portion, so that's where those would be. And again, it's indicated on the site map that they've provided. These are the site conditions as they exist today. As you can see, and as I alluded to, it's rural, agricultural, or silviculture predominant, at least where their site is, but there's some other uses in the nearby vicinity. So being that this is a special use permit, there's a lot of standards and requirements that their application needs to meet, and we'll go through these, and the applicant will speak in regards to them as well. So in particular, when we're looking at a level 3 solar energy system, they need to meet setback requirements. The biggest of which is it needs to be 500 feet from residential dwelling units, as well as 100 feet from structures. And you'll notice when they've submitted their site plan, you know, there's no panels that break that setback, so they meet that. In regards to screening, we provide applicants several different ways to meet screening requirements. They're choosing to utilize existing mature vegetation, and it'll be a depth of 75 feet. And 75-foot vegetation screening, it'll be tough pressed to actually see the solar farm from the road, most likely. They will also install a 6-foot security fence with locking gates. Okay, so the project is located within an airport height overlay district, so they've completed all of our ordinance requirements. They've did the FFA notice criteria tool. They've done an aeronautical study, and it was determined that the solar facility is of no hazard to the air navigation. Regarding erosion control, they'll install native grasses and BMP measures, as well as a DEQ sedimentation and erosion control plan. Regarding nuisance control, they will have no inverters placed within 150 feet of the parcel boundary or public right-of-way. Again, these are all things that the applicant has already met as they're required by the ordinance. So another big one, especially since it's in proximity to the airport, is a solar glare study. They've contracted that out to Forge Solar, did several analysis. There was no glare found, and just to reaffirm, there was no hazard found for air navigation. Excuse me. Another thing we require is a decommissioning reclamation plan. And in our ordinance, we ask that they detail their criteria for determining what criteria needs to be met to determine decommissioning. And so they have great language in there. I will say they do have one clause in regard to a force majeure event, which basically means a large scale catastrophe or something like that. Something that you don't really plan for. That's kind of outside the ordinance as it's written, but I do recommend a special use permit condition to allow that language. I think it's a great thing to put in there, and it's something maybe we should look at adopting in our ordinance for force majeure events. Okay, so their decommissioning plan, it also includes their financial figures, which we'll talk about in regards to their bond. So, at the 20-year project life, accounting for inflation but not accounting for salvage value, is going to have an estimated value of $334,000. Once you factor in salvage, it's going to be $104,000. And so that'll come up when we get to the bond, which should be the next section. Yes. So another thing we require with this type of project is we require the applicant to secure a bond. We want to ensure that they have the financial ability to decommission the site and restore it to prior conditions should something unfortunate happen. We set that bond to be 15% of the assessed value of the real property and the total cost of the facility. So they've used those numbers that was done in the decommissioning plan, and they have secured a certifying issuance letter for a $130,000 bond. Now, I will say I've advised the conditions to include that as a condition of the permit. The reason is, when we did our most recent text amendments, I made a mistake, and in the wording, I said that the decommissioning bond should be secured prior to the issuance of the permit. It was a mistake on my part. It should have stated that it was secured after the special use permit, but prior to the building permit. This is typically done due to the long lead times it can take to secure these permits, and the bond may no longer be valid as it was offered. And also, with any applicant, we don't want them to go through the financial and staff hurdles to secure a bond and then, as a county, have the project not be approved. So knowing that those issues existed and that it was a mistake on my part, you can admonish me as you see fit, but it was a mistake on my part, so I advised them to request it as a condition of the permit, which we've already gone over. The other thing they've provided is a power purchase agreement, so the power generated will be sold to the Electric Membership Corporation. And again, it is a 5 megawatt facility. The other things they've provided that's required by the ordinance is a site plan, a description of the property, a plat, and a ground lease agreement. And again, all these things have been provided. The way the ordinance is currently structured, there's 2 items that can be provided prior to the issuance of the special use permit or afterwards, but before the building permit, and that is the Section 404 permit if it's needed, and the DEQ letter regarding any environmental impacts. Knowing that those types of things can take a very long time to secure, and the way the ordinance, I use the discretion that the ordinance provides me to allow them to secure those items after the issuance of the special use permit, but prior to the issuance of a building permit. So, should they be awarded the special use permit, prior to them securing the building permit, they'll need to secure a DOT commercial access point, a 911 address point, the Section 404 permit, and the DEQ report. All of that to say, everything they've submitted satisfies the requirements of the ordinance. So, in the applicant's submission, they provided some special use permit conditions that they were requesting. Items 1 through 4 we've already covered. They're just memorializing things that are already required by the ordinance. And the DEQ permit letter and the Section 404. In the conditions recommended by me, I'm recommending the same 4 items to be memorialized in addition to the things I've already discussed. They'll secure the bond, accept the force majeure language, and the language that they talk about if they can provide substantial evidence that the project will be started, it won't meet the criteria for decommissioning. So there was a planning board hearing on this item February 6th. There were no public comments at the hearing, and the planning board gave a vote of recommendation of approval. Given all the factors at hand and that the applicant has met all the requirements of the ordinance, including the conditions that are recommended, I've also given it a recommendation of approval. So, just something to keep in mind for commissioners as we go through this and as the applicant does their presentation. These are the finding of facts that they're going to present material on to demonstrate that they've met these findings, and that's something you'll need to consider as you decide to issue or not issue the permit. And we can always bring it back up when it's time. We can back up to this slide. So prior to moving forward, are there any commissioner comments or questions for me? No?
Not at this time.
Okay, so with this being a quasi-judicial and not a legislative hearing, there's a few extra things we just need to make sure we take care of. So as I alluded to earlier, if a person has standing, they're allowed to speak. Excuse me. If they do not have standing, they can be heard at the pleasure of the board. And standing's just not for anyone. You have to meet the criteria for standing. And when you're giving testimony, it needs to be competent and substantial evidence. It's not opinion based, it's not hearsay, it needs to be qualified material. So at this time we need to have people sworn in. So if there's anyone with standing that would like to speak on the matter, I'll have you stand and raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the evidence you'll provide to the board on this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Any objections? Any abstentions? Good. You're sworn in. Okay. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to the applicants.
Good evening, commissioners. First and foremost, I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Addison. He has been very thorough and very helpful throughout this process. My name is Merrick Parrott. I'm an attorney with Parker Poe. Address is 301 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant Barron Solar to request this special use permit. Just want to briefly set the stage for our presentation tonight. I have 3 people here with me. First, I have Mr. Jay Nemeth. He is with the developer Headwater Solar of this solar facility. He's going to run through very briefly a PowerPoint presentation we have here tonight, again, given it's our burden to provide this competent material substantial evidence that Mr. Addison was speaking about. You will also hear from 2 expert witnesses. First, we have Jennifer Lester. She is a professional engineer specializing in civil engineering of solar facilities. She is going to present testimony on health and safety and will give her expert opinion on whether the facility will maintain the public health, safety, and general welfare. That is one of the 4 findings of fact that Mr. Addison referenced earlier. You will lastly hear from Mr. Nick Kirkland. He is a state certified appraiser. He will present a value opinion report that his company did and will give his expert opinion on whether the facility will maintain or enhance the value of contiguous property. As you've heard from Mr. Addison, the application has been reviewed and detailed by the county staff and found to be complete, and the county planning board did unanimously vote to recommend approval of this special use permit, subject to the conditions that Mr. Addison referenced. And the applicant is in agreement with the 7 conditions that you just saw in his presentation. I would now welcome Mr. Nemeth to run through this PowerPoint.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the commissioners. Thank you for your service to this county. Let me start by telling you about Headwater Energy. My address is 3725 National Drive. That's in Raleigh, North Carolina. Headwater Energy is a utility scale solar developer. So the projects that we are developing are on the ground. We don't do anything on buildings. So most of what we do is of this size and larger. We have a portfolio of projects that are operating and in development of 1.8 gigawatts, which is 1,800 megawatts. So if this is a 5 megawatt project, it sort of gives you an idea of the number of projects that we are developing. We have 13 operating projects currently in North Carolina. And I would say that our team is really a lot of utility scale solar veterans. Folks that have really been in this industry since Senate Bill 3, thank you. Senate Bill 3 brought the renewable energy portfolio standard to North Carolina. Barron Solar is a 5 megawatt project, and it's interconnecting with PDEMC. I will share with you a little bit of my personal background. Before going into solar development, I worked for NCEMC, which is the statewide G&T cooperative that serves PDEMC. So one of the reasons that Headwater Energy continues to look for projects on the co-ops is because of our relationship with the co-ops. What you'll find, there probably was a time that you saw a lot of small solar being built in the state, and then it sort of dried up, and you started seeing much larger projects that are being built for Duke. We think that there is value to being able to work with and provide solar energy to the electric cooperatives, and that's a big part of what our portfolio in North Carolina is these co-op projects. Project will generate electricity with no noise or emissions. It's a great site for a solar farm because there is an existing vegetative buffer. Part of your ordinance says that we will leave a 75-foot existing buffer around our project. So, as Mr. Addison said, it just won't be visible from the road. To our south, you can see that we have utility substations. There's both a Duke Power substation and a PDEMC substation to the south. So even beyond the vegetative buffer is what would look to most like existing utility infrastructure. We will be responsible for decommissioning the project at the end of the project's life, and this is really for 2 reasons. There's a statutory obligation in North Carolina for decommissioning, And as part of this special use permit, there's our agreement to, as one of the conditions, to provide the bond for decommissioning. One thing I'd like to say sort of on the side, Mr. Addison shared some specifics of our project, and if you notice, there was a description of our panels, the modules. Those are being built by First Solar, and they're U.S. made. So we're excited that the most important part of this solar farm, and as much of the solar farm as possible, will be made with domestic materials. So we're excited about that.
The only thing better if they could be made in Anson County.
Never know. I'm going to pause to make sure there are no questions. When we go through the specific standards review, at the planning board, I repeated a lot of what Mr. Addison said, and I think it was redundant. So if it's okay with the commission, then I'll go pretty quickly, and I'll just go through the slides and make sure that we know what those ordinance standards are, but I'm not going to go into a lot of details since Mr. Addison has already covered it. So we'll meet the requirements of the setbacks, we'll meet the requirements of the vegetative screen, the fence will be inside the vegetative buffer, and it really is, it's for protection, right? It's a safety thing that we maintain a fence around our facilities. The equipment that we use will be UL listed. We will follow the North Carolina Building Code. We'll follow the National Electric Code. The co-ops have their own specifics for engineering requirements that are often set by the Rural Utility Service, so we will follow all of the specifics from the co-op. We've met the requirements of the airport height overlay. There's no impact. One of the conditions of this permit is the DEQ permit that will really inform a lot of this maintenance, erosion, and nuisance control. We will follow those. We'll maintain the inverters more than 100 feet from the property lines or public right-of-way, and we will not direct any outdoor lights at any residential properties. So the glare analysis that Mr. Addison described, what that showed is 0% glare. So there's no impact from glare. We will follow the requirements of this, the conditions of this permit regarding the decommissioning plan and the decommissioning bond. And we agree to what Mr. Addison showed for the pre-SUP approvals and the post-SUP approvals. So as I wrap up, and we go into the special use permit findings of fact, I want to review how this project meets all those findings of facts. And I'm going to do this in a couple cases by introducing our experts on these different topics. So the first of these findings is that the project will maintain the public health, safety, and general welfare if it's located where proposed and developed and operated according to the plan is submitted. So on this finding of fact, I'd like to introduce again Jennifer Lester.
Good evening. My name is Jen Lester. I'm a licensed professional engineer with Kimley Horn. I've been there about 8 years. That's located at 421 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. My background is civil engineering, and my experience has been mainly utility and community scale solar farms. I've worked on over 200 projects across the Southeast. About 80 of those have been within the state of North Carolina. So very similar to this project and projects in these surrounding counties. So we prepared two of the things that you have in the application packet. One of them is the site plan that's over here on the wall. The other is the decommissioning plan and cost estimate. I will not go through everything that is in the signed affidavit. I think you have a copy of it, but I'll hit a couple highlights, and then if you have anything that you have questions on, we can circle back. So in general, after construction of the project, the maintenance of the facility is pretty low key. It's largely mowing a few times a year, and then over-the-counter herbicides like Roundup to keep things like the gravel roads clear for emergency vehicles and for O&M vehicles, operations and maintenance vehicles. The panels themselves are primarily glass with an aluminum frame and then thin film of silicon in the center. All of those materials are considered by the EPA to be non-hazardous, especially as it relates to an end-of-life capacity and how that is handled in a landfill. So it would go into a regular landfill, similar to household trash or anything else. The solar panels are considered by NCDEQ to be pervious, which just means that beneath the panels, because there is grass, it's treated essentially like grass. It's not like a sidewalk, it's not like a building where water can't penetrate into the grass underneath. So that means there's typically no permanent stormwater measures that are required, and all of the runoff on the site is typically meets or improves the existing condition based on what's out there today. There are typically no emissions, no fumes, just based on how the facility operates. And typically minimal traffic because it's an unmanned facility. So it's monitored remotely, and then maybe a few times a month you'll have a vehicle go and make sure that everything's okay or replace things as that comes up. So based on all of those things, it's my professional opinion that as proposed, the site will not materially endanger the public health or safety. I'm happy to revisit anything if you have questions on the plan, on the decommissioning, or anything that I just said. If not, I will turn it back over to Jay.
Another thing that I'll share is that what we're seeing is that there is a move toward recycling the panels. So these panels have what we believe will be a 35-year life, and we are already seeing that some of those first panels that were built across the United States a decade ago, it is better to take that equipment and collect the aluminum for its scrap value, collect the glass for its scrap value, rather than sending them to the landfill. So, well, just what I would suggest is that over time, when panels reach the end of their life, I have an expectation that they probably will be more likely to be recycled than to go to a landfill. All right, special use permit finding number 2. The use is listed as a special use in the district in which it is proposed to be located and complies with the regulations and standards of this ordinance, including the dimensional regulations as well as those contained in the individual standards for that special use. I think that what Mr. Addison showed and what we had in our slides demonstrate that we have met all the requirements of the ordinance. For our next finding of fact, that the use will maintain and enhance the value of contiguous property, or that the use is a public necessity, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Kirkland.
Good evening. My name is Nick Kirkland with Kirkland Appraisals. I'm a state certified general appraiser in North Carolina and 7 other states. I've been appraising for nearly a decade now. I'm a candidate for designation with the Appraisal Institute, and I've been accepted as an expert in property value impacts and questions of harmony for proposed uses like this before boards just like this hundreds of times across a couple states. To that end, the affidavit that you all have before you is from another member of Kirkland Appraisals. I was not at the planning board meeting. However, I do have the same conclusions and helped prepare the impact study that affidavit was based upon. And the conclusions of that study are that it's my professional opinion that the proposed development will maintain or enhance the value of the adjoining or abutting properties, and also that it would be a harmonious use in its location. And just to quickly highlight some of the most salient parts of that affidavit, and not to rehash the whole thing, starting with number 9, what we've done is we've looked at the adjoining uses next to the proposed Barron solar facility and compared those to the adjoining uses of other nearby solar facilities, and use that to determine whether or not this is a typical location for a solar facility like this. And it is a typical location. Most of the adjoining uses are very similar and consistent where you see other utility scale solar. To determine whether or not there would be an impact on property values, we've done what's called a matched pair analysis, where we compare a home, and we also have examples of vacant land, of properties right next to a solar facility, and we've compared those to nearby properties that sold that are not next to the solar facility in order to determine, is the one next to the solar facility selling for more, less, or about the same as those other nearby properties, to determine whether or not the solar facility is having an impact on the property values of the adjoining properties. We have well over 100 examples, including vacant land and developed residential homes, that are showing no impact to the adjoining property values for being next to existing solar facilities. Given that there is a significant vegetative buffer and a setback for the proposed barren solar, it's my professional opinion that the proposed development will maintain or enhance the value of adjoining or abutting properties, and also that it would be in harmony where it's proposed. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
No, I looked through a lot of the land comparisons, and I mean, obviously there was a ton of documentation there. So I know that point can be argued, obviously, by neighboring landowners that it is going to reduce the value of their property. But you've obviously shown plenty of examples.
We're always looking. I covered about 2 months ago. I covered about half North Carolina, looking at every solar facility, looking for adjoining sales, because it's important to make sure we have as up to date data as possible. So,
yes, sir.
Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Jay.
All right.
I had shared that to the south is the co-op substation and the Duke substation. I think that's another thing I'd like to share with you, is that there will not be any poles going to the distribution line on any street. It's going to be sort of internal to our project. We're going to be able to interconnect to the PDEMC substation within, sort of on the border of where our property touches the property that serves their substation. And then finally, moving to finding of fact number 4, the use is in compliance with the general plans for the physical development of the county as embodied in these regulations. So we've already talked about the fact that there will be very little impact in the form of traffic, in the form of people being on site. So what this really results in is that we have a project that will add to the county tax base without the requirement of any additional burden on the county's resources. It is domestic energy for the benefit of the EMCs, and it will require little to no infrastructure services from the county. And that is our prepared presentation. I'm glad to answer any questions.
So since you speak about tax value, I know myself and Commissioner Woodburn sat in on the Association of County Commissioners conference that we had back in January. And one of the things, the discussions, and one of the priorities or the goals of the Association of County Commissioners is to get legislators to repeal the tax breaks that solar farms get. And for the public who don't know, whatever the value of that tax farm is, that solar farm, they get an 80% reduction in their tax value. So you only pay 20% of what that value is to the county. The priority goal of the association is to repeal that, so you have to pay full tax value. Now, and I'm not saying you in particular, but all solar farms. Does that change your, I guess, business model if that law is repealed, where you have to pay 100% tax? Does that change your model of?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
it would.
Okay.
I mean, it does become impactful.
Yes.
When you consider that these projects have very high capital costs, so it's very expensive to build them, but once they're built, we no longer have the risk of fuel volatility like we do at a combined cycle plant, where you're subject to the fluctuation of gas prices. So there are high capital costs, and then any sort of variation from what I would call variable costs, so the taxes would be sort of a variable cost, would have impacts on our ability for the project to be viable.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm that.
But
So,
as we know, though, there are many uses that get tax abatement
Sure.
for different reasons. So,
Sure.
I think the fact that it is not a burden on the county justifies the fact that it does, get some abatement of what its value is.
Yes. So, okay. Any other questions from the commissioners?
One.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is basically just a devil's advocate type of question. Just with the expected life of approximately 30 years, in the event that Headwater Energy is not around at that particular time, who does the responsibility for decommissioning fall on?
Yes, sir. So let me just share that part of our obligation to our landowner is we have a lease that's 20 years that gives us gives us 4 options to renew for 5 years. So our lease term is anywhere from 20 to what we would expect to be 40 years, after which we're obligated to come remove all the equipment and to give it back to the landowner in the form that it already was. So we have an obligation in the form of the statutory obligation for decommissioning, in the form of this conditions in our permit, and to our landowner. I share that when the project is built, the capital up front is really the hurdle. Once it's operating, the sunshine is free. So for one to expect that a solar farm would be abandoned would be like saying, I have something that's making money. It's selling power to the utility and getting paid for it, but I want to walk away from it. So it's in that scenario, the bank would get it next because it still is an operating resource that makes money. But there's no reason to abandon something where the money's already been spent, and then every year that it performs.
I'm sorry, I guess I wasn't clear. My thinking is at the end of its useful life, once it's, like I said, at the end of 30, 35 years, or however long it's supposed to last, and just say, for example, if the company that put it in is not in existence, then who's responsible for doing the decommissioning, taking it down and getting rid of it?
The project owner at the time. So when you say the project's not in existence,
I said at the end of its useful life, so
sure.
yeah.
Someone will own it. Someone will own
Someone
the
will still
project
be there.
at the end of its life. And that is the party who's responsible for removing it.
So just to clarify, so if the landowner doesn't renew the contract in 20 years,
So
the landowner would then be responsible for the decommissioning plan?
No. So we're the ones that renew the term for 4 or 5 year extensions. So at the end of that term, when we tell the landowner we no longer want to lease, we have an obligation contractually to the landowner to remove all of the equipment. So really we're talking about parallel paths where there's a mutual interest. From the county's perspective, you're saying, how do we make sure that someone's just not leaving equipment in our county?
Yeah.
And from our landowner's perspective, to whom we also have contractual obligation, we've already, agreed and have a contract with ramifications in that contract that says we will remove it and leave it in the same condition that we found the land whenever we built the project.
Yeah, once again, if your company is not in existence, is where I'm trying to go with this thing, for whatever reason, and hopefully that's not going to be the case. But like I said, it's a devil's advocate type of question. If for some reason or other your company is not in existence, you're no longer in existence,
Yes.
then where does that responsibility fall?
The owner of the project at that time. So if we're not in existence,
Somebody
then
will own it.
Someone will a bank will take it into receivership, right? The bank will own it.
Okay.
If the bank sells it to somebody else, then
And
they
they'll
would
be
be the owner
responsible.
at that time.
Okay.
So, I definitely understand your question, and I don't mean to downplay what you're saying,
Right,
because I
right, okay.
understand what you're saying. But someone will own the project,
Okay.
and they have those obligations of our contracts.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Forbes, you had
The bond is for?
The bond is just an assurance that there will be money. So the county would be able to use that bond, call on that bond to say, who's the owner? We don't know who the owner is. Well, we're going to call on this bond, and we're going to use this money to remove the equipment.
The county can call that bond in?
Yes.
Also this, I was not clear when Mr. Addison was talking. Do you have a bond, or are you going to secure it?
We have shared the language of our bond. It has to be executed, but we won't execute it until, as it'll be one of our conditions. But yes,
Do you know when it would be executed?
it would be executed before construction, before the permit, or before the building permit is issued, but after the special use permit is approved.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, well, I guess there's going to be a twofold question. First, who's going to monitor the bond that they're going to have to take to get the permit? Who's going to maintain to make sure that they keep the bond as long as they stay in existence?
Is this bond a one-time payment, or is it a series of payments?
So the bond will be issued by a bonding agency.
I understand.
And-
How often do y'all have to renew it, or how often do y'all have to pay that bonding annuity?
We pay every year on that bond. So we'll just have to confirm with Mr. Addison what the term is, but I expect that it will be
That's in the
described.
language.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Just want to point out the language in the newly adopted solar ordinance that y'all passed, I believe, in January, about the bond. It's subsection N7, says to continue to hold a permit. So in order for us to continue to have a use permit and be able to operate this use, we must maintain financial responsibility and must provide any information requested by the county to establish that we continue to maintain financial responsibility. And in addition, we are required under the ordinance to notify the county of any significant change in the identity of any person or structure of the business entity that holds the permit, identify any person or structure of business entity that owns or operates the facility, and identify the county of any significant change in the assets of the permit holder. So there are safeguards built into your ordinance about continued confirmation about that financial assurance in that bond. I don't know.
I will just jump in and say that the language regarding the bond is essentially a continuation of what we had through the prior solar energy ordinance, which was a standalone ordinance. So the same bond requirements that we've had for Strata Solar and some of our other entities is the same language that's in place in the zoning ordinance now. So just to give that clarity.
I understand that, Mr. Addison, but my question is, who's going to monitor that year to year or 5 years or however long they get the bond to go back to make sure the bond is current for the next 4 or 5 years?
Well, by the requirements of the ordinance, they have to be able to demonstrate. If we call on them and say, hey, you need to prove to us that you still have the bond, I would say I think the way the ordinance is written, if they can't, we have grounds to repeal the special use permit.
So, in other words, you're telling me that that's going to be following your responsibility to go back and check to make sure that bonds are good each year or every 4 years?
If that's what we need to do, then yes, we can do that. Anything else?
One more question. Just for the ones that's listening that lives in that area, so you're saying putting the solar farm will not depreciate their property value for the surrounding residents in that area?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure.
And the appraised amount for this farm is, how much is it? 130? Is that what it come? Because I know y'all calculated depreciation or something like that. Is that the amount of the bond? Is that what the value is?
No, it's not. It's our decommissioning plan
Mm-hmm.
demonstrates what the cost of decommissioning is net of the salvageable
Right.
cost. And then per
So
the
that came down to,
ordinance,
was that 104?
104.
So roughly this is,
And there's an addition on top of that, 15% of the real property assessed value on top of that.
and that
So that's
was,
how we got to 130.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So with the taxable amount for our sake, will it be 130 is what I'm asking.
No, the bond, the 130 is the bond amount. That's separate from taxable.
I know,
value.
right. Yeah.
I don't know what.
I want to know what the amount of taxable is for the county.
You know,
What's
If I
the-
had to estimate, I would say it's probably not, so subject to the abatement, so probably $4 or $5 million project value.
of taxes?
No, the total value, the total value of their property, of their project would be 4 to 5 million is his estimate. I'm not holding him to that number, but 4 to 5 million.
Roughly
And then they're going to pay 20%
of that.
property tax on that.
That's what I needed.
that's
That's the
where-
number I was interested in, because I want to know what good it is. to
How it's
them.
how it's
that's-
adding to the coffers of the county.
Yeah.
Break that
Absolutely.
down. That's a $4 or $5 million house in Anson County,
Well, yeah.
but they're only paying 20% tax revenue on that.
That's why I wanted to know what the 20% would be. So 5 million.
Yeah.
10% of that is 500,000. So we're looking at $1 million.
So it'd be 20% of that. So 80% abatement. So it'd be
Right. Well,
We'll call it a
if
million.
we're looking at 5 million, we're looking at $1 million.
yes.
Yeah. I just want to know
Of course.
what the benefit is for Anson County.
Absolutely.
That's my interest. Mm-hmm.
Is that over a 20-year period?
No,
Every
that
year.
would be
Yes,
per year.
every year.
Per year. I thank you.
Yes.
Mhm.
Any other questions at this time? All right. So, Mr. Addison?
So, you've heard from me and the applicants. Are there any other board comments or questions? Okay.
At this time? Or, Mr. Leary, you got something? No. Okay.
Those were the only ones that sworn in, so I'm going to assume there's no public comments on the matter if you have standing. So at this time, I'll turn it over to the board to, like I said, consider the findings, and also laid a sheet on your desk. But I'll just leave that up while you close
Okay.
out the public hearing and vote.
Okay, so you've got the 4 items listed that the project has to meet, the findings of fact. Mr. Forbes, it's my understanding that we have to vote on these 4 findings. We have to verify that this project meets these 4 findings while in this public hearing. Is that correct?
That's correct. You would discuss each of these. If I may, I'd suggest individually, the board, you would read, you may want to just read like on number 1, see if there's any comment, then you could vote on them individually or all at one time.
Okay, so for item number 1, the use will maintain the public health, safety, and general welfare if located where proposed and developed and operated according to the plan as submitted. So does this board find that that is true with this project?
Mr. Chair, that would be based on the evidence presented.
Based on the evidence presented of this project. So,
Based on what was presented, I do feel.
okay. So do we need that in a motion second? Okay, so is that your motion, Mr. Leary?
I think we can cover all 4 at once.
Yes.
We can cover all 4 at
But
once.
we can, Mr. Forbes,
Yep. I mean, for the sake of time.
can we cover all 4 use items at one time
If you would
with
like.
one vote?
If
So,
you would like, but you need to discuss each one.
okay, all right. So, item number 2, the use is listed as a special use in the district in which it is proposed to be located and complies with the regulations and standards of this ordinance, including the dimensional regulations, as well as those contained in the individual standards for that special use. Does this project meet this criteria as presented? Okay. Number 3, the use will maintain or enhance the value of contiguous property, or that the use is a public necessity. What's the board's opinion on that?
I just trust the experts that gave the information, so I don't know. I'm just gonna take their expert information in consideration. So I mean, that's where we're standing for all of them.
Supporting documentation, it shows that it will maintain the property value.
Okay. And then item 4, the use is in compliance with the general plans for the physical development of the county as embodied in these regulations.
I trust the experts' presentation.
Okay. Typically, Mr. Ford, and I'm coming to you again, typically we don't vote in a public hearing,
Correct.
but in this instance, do we vote on these in the public, or do we exit the public and then vote?
You can exit and then,
Okay.
then vote.
All right.
What you're gonna do is when you close the public hearing, closing off evidence, and you've accepted, and the planner Mr. Addison did ask if there was any more. No one else has come forward. So you have to go by the evidence presented.
Okay.
I make a motion to come out of public hearing.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to exit the public hearing by Commissioner Ellerby, second by Commissioner Gatewood. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so after hearing the evidence presented tonight, what is the board's pleasure?
I make a motion that we accept and receive the proposed zoning findings from our Ms. Addison and approve this project for Barron Solar.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Ellerby to approve the special use permit that's been presented here tonight. I don't have the number in front of me, but
SUP 25-0002.
yeah, SUP 25-0002.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ellerby, second by Commissioner Gatewood. Is there any discussion on that? What?
Would the board mind amending your motion to include the recommended special use permit conditions, since that is what's tied to it? And then if you would like, you could also consider adopting the findings and conclusions as I've provided you. They were proposed, we can amend them, or we can do it at a later time, but the permit's not officially issued until the board has accepted the findings and conclusions. But at the very least, if you don't mind, I would appreciate amending the motion to include the special use permit conditions that have been provided.
Okay.
But is that what you presented to us?
Yes, but because they're
Okay.
permit conditions, you need to accept them.
Okay.
And so will the applicant, they'll sign as well.
Okay. I amend that motion to special use permit conditions as well.
Okay, so the motion has been amended by Commissioner Ellerby to include the special use conditions that were provided.
Second.
The second stands by Commissioner Gatewood. Any other discussion on that? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion passes.
And then at the board's pleasure, would you like to adopt the findings and conclusions that I've already presented you, or would you like more time to deliberate on the conclusion? They were provided to you in the packet, and if you would like, we can go ahead and do that now, or if you want, we can confer back and forth via email and take care of it then. It doesn't have to be during an open session.
If you want to go ahead and handle it now, we can.
If you're okay with it, like I said, they've already been provided
I make
to
a
you.
motion we adopt the findings
And conclusion.
and conclusions.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Ellerby, second by Commissioner Gatewood. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Addison. All right.
Yep, we're good.
All right, that concludes our public hearing. We don't have a consent agenda tonight, so we're going to move into our appearances. And next up on our appearances, we have Mr. Chuck Horn and Randy Collins with the AEDC.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
Thank you all. I appreciate the invitation to join you tonight. It's been a number of years since I've appeared before your group. I think 2017 maybe was the last time, so I'm still around, still doing this. What I wanted to do is give you a little history about Anson Economic Development Corporation, and Randy will join me and bring you up to date on some of the things that are happening. The AEDC was formed in 1992 at the suggestion of Jimmy Hardison, who some of you knew was the president of First National Bank here in Waysboro. Jimmy had seen the need for a non-governmental organization that could help with economic development when the need arose. At that time, and for a number of years, the county had funded economic development actually through the Chamber of Commerce, and that changed some years after that. But it was all overseen by the county. That's the point. So the AEDC was incorporated in 1992. Jimmy invited a number of local business people to serve on a board. There was no budget, no paid positions. We did get contributions from businesses like ours, for example, but we were there just to help if we could provide any help. But throughout all that time, the county handled all the economic development. In the early 2000s, and I don't remember the exact year, but the legislature decided to create economic development partnerships excuse me, throughout the state and assign counties to each one. Anson was assigned to the Charlotte Regional Partnership, and the state contributed monies to those partnerships on behalf of the various counties. And with us being a Tier 1 county, a disproportionate amount of money was contributed on our behalf to the Charlotte Regional Partnership. Well, what we saw was that we got nothing in return for that. Charlotte rarely ever contacted us about any opportunities for business growth. Businesses might be interested in locating here. We just got nothing from the Charlotte region. And so in 2015, I had a conversation with Mary Beck, who was our economic developer at that time, about surely we can find an organization to be a part of that would make more sense than the Charlotte region. And so we did a little research and found that the organization that was most aligned with Anson County was called the North Carolina Southeast. And remembering that this was all done by the legislature, we met with the Southeast and asked if we could join them, and they said, we'd love to have you, but the legislature's got to approve that. So we went through that process, got the legislature to approve us moving from the Charlotte region to the North Carolina Southeast. And that, without a doubt, was the best thing that ever happened to us. Mary asked me if I would serve on the Southeast board to represent Anson County, and I've been doing that ever since 2015, I think. We were only a member of the Southeast for 1 or 2 years, I'm not exactly sure, but the state decided to eliminate all of that and change economic development to public-private partnerships. And fortunately, the Southeast had the vision to see that that was coming. They had already prepared for it. They got a number of businesses throughout the region to contribute funds to become private partners, and then developed a system for counties to pay to be a member of all that. And so it was a very smooth transition. I've been serving on that board, the North Carolina Southeast Board, ever since we joined in 2015. And the benefit of that is that I've served on just about every committee there, and today I serve on the executive committee, which puts me in a position of working with others to determine what the Southeast is going to do, what they're going to fund, what they're going to push in terms of projects. In June of 2017, the county decided to eliminate the economic development position. And at that time, I was chair of the AEDC, as I've been for many, many years. And so I stepped up and said, well, I'll be the economic developer for Anson County, of course an unpaid position, but I'll continue to work in that role because of my connection with the Southeast. I'm sure I can get them to help me. And that's what we did. For 1 year, I served in that role. I would come to this board and give you a report about once a quarter of what was going on, what we were looking at, the projects, and so forth. In June of 2018, the county manager contacted me and said, we want AEDC to take over the economic development. We want you to hire the economic developer. We will subsidize that with a financial contribution, and so we agreed to do that. So since 2018, we've accepted the responsibility for the economic development. At about that very same time, the state decided to start sharing sales tax with Tier 1 counties, I'm sure, and I think maybe Tier 2 counties, but definitely Tier 1 counties. And that gave us the funds we needed to be able to do more than just hire an economic developer. The law, if you will, that the state created was to have those funds, the sales tax funds could only be spent on economic development and education. So as chair of AEDC, I met with the superintendent of schools here in Anson County and the president of South Piedmont Community College, and the three of us agreed that the most logical way to do this would be to split the funds 3 ways, and that's the way it's been ever since. Immediately the AEDC saw that our number one need was for a spec building. We were hearing that message from the North Carolina Southeast over and over. You've got to have product, preferably spec buildings. Land is good, but spec building is much better. That's how you're going to land your best new opportunity there. So we said, well, we're getting this sales tax money, we got to save it, because it takes several $1 million to build a spec building, and that's what we started doing. In 2020, PD Electric decided to buy the 120 acres on the eastern side of Anson County on Highway 74, where they have now built their new offices. And that was the reason they bought it, was because they wanted to consolidate their 2 offices. But Donnie Spivey, who's the president of PD Electric, was also on our board, and Donnie knew this whole plan that we had to be able to develop a spec building and attract new clients to Anson County. Donnie came to me and he said, here's my proposal. We'll buy this entire tract of land. We only need a portion of it for PD Electric, but we'll buy the entire tract, and we'll ask AEDC to develop that land, come up with a plan for how it would be divided into particular plots, and then handle the potential sales of that land and or build spec buildings on that land. So that was a wonderful opportunity that PD presented to us, and we agreed to do that. At the same time, I started working with Representative Mark Brody of looking at possibilities for grant money to be able to build a spec building, because I wanted to accelerate that process. At the same time, Representative Brody told me, well, you know what, you got to have sewer. You got to be able to run sewer from that particular plot all the way to the Hornwood pump station, which is about 3.5 miles. And so in working with Representative Brody, he was able to get us an $8 million, us being AEDC, get us an $8 million grant specific to building spec buildings. That's all that money can be used for. And he also got us a $3.88 million grant to run the sewer line. The $3.88 million came from us getting a projection of how much the sewer would cost. Today that number is $4.5 million, so it's gone up quite a bit, but we've got the $3.88 million grant, and AEDC will certainly be responsible for coming up with the balance of the monies. When all of this happened, we immediately saw the need for having someone to oversee this. Our group certainly didn't know a whole lot about building spec buildings, nor did we have the time to be able to do that. And so we were able to hire Thomas Curitan, who is here tonight. Thomas has a lot of experience over the years with building projects, And so we hired Thomas. He's on a contract basis, so he's not an employee of AEDC, but he has done an outstanding job for us of overseeing both the spec building project and the sewer project. And it is overwhelming. That's just the best way I can say it. It's overwhelming, and Thomas has done a great job. So that's kind of the history, and that's where we are today. The last thing I'll say is that the first question that Representative Brody asked me when we started talking about these grant monies, he said, who do you have in your organization that's going to be able to oversee that? And I said, well, we're very fortunate. Michelle Brock, who is the Chief Financial Officer of South Piedmont Community College, and as you know, is right now the interim president. Michelle has been our treasurer for a number of years. She watches that money like a hawk and makes sure that we do the right things with it. So that's a little background on the history of AEDC. I've provided some financial information for you to show you what we've done with the monies that we received, and then I'll also ask Randy to come up and just give you a little quick update on what's going on, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, it's good to be here. I spoke to you in January. I gave you a little bit of an update. You requested us to come back, and it took us a little while to get our calendar straight, but I'm glad we were able to do that. For the record, I will mention Chuck is our chairman of the board, current chairman of the board of the EDC, and has done a great job. And we appreciate your time tonight. A little more detail what's been going on at the EDC, that the board continues to meet every month and report the progress of what's going on in economic development. I think I've introduced myself, but just in case for the record, I'm Randy Collins. I'm the executive director of the Anson Economic Development Corporation. County officials serve on our board, including Chairman Caudill, Commissioner Woodburn, and County Manager Len Sussman. Former Commissioner J.D. Bricken also serve. Staff gives written updates each month to the board on the prospects that are received and responses sent. Again, those prospects are coming from the state generally down to North Carolina Southeast, and then Southeast sends them to us. I'll give you a little more detail on how many prospects we've seen. There's quite a few. We maintain a database right now of about 25 sites that include both existing buildings and land. For the record, and you all should know this, we are always seeking additional sites, and we would welcome that. Chuck mentioned we're a member of the Southeast Partnership. They are a critical partner for us in helping us not only in marketing, but they bring the prospects to our table, and we respond. And I think I've mentioned to you before, but many of those prospects are done confidentially. We don't always know what type of company it is, where they're located, if they're overseas. Basically, they tell us the industry, how many jobs, and what amount of acres they need or jobs that they would provide. Chuck mentioned the grants from the legislature, the Shell building and the sewer line totaled $12 million in grants. The Shell building is very close now to a building permit located just east of the PD Electric building. 45,000 square foot building, metal building will be built there. We've had more than several delays, and but we're moving forward on that project. The sewer line extension is it's going to be a long piece of pipe, 3 miles down 74 to bring sewer to the Atlantic Gateway Park, which is across the street from PD Electric's headquarters, about 80 acres there. We've received bids on that project, and we hope to award the contract very soon. As required in the state grants, and I think you needed to know this, the state requires that we have an independent CPA audit each year, and we can pay for the audit out of the funds of the grants. So we initiated a firm out of Rockingham, and they are in the midst right now of a very detailed financial audit, and we'd be happy to release that audit results to this board to let you know that everything is being done in a transparent way. Personally, I serve on several community boards in addition to my duties at the EDC that relate to my job. I'm on the board of the Anson Chamber, the Anson County TDA, Uptown Wadesboro, NC Works Center team, because we work on workforce development issues, the Economic Development Partnership for the North Carolina, that's the state level organization, and I serve on the Central Carolina Economic Development Partnership. Now to prospects. Our recent prospects up until today numbered 10. We're up to 12 prospects. And the previous month to that was 8 prospects, and you saw my report, 10 prospects before that, and 7 prospects, a total of 30 prospects in the past 5 months. Not every prospect we are able to respond to, because many of them are asking for something that we don't have, either a piece of land. There was one that needed a almost 1 million square feet of industrial site. We don't have that in the current inventory, but we try to work with every prospect to make sure we can present something. Another key item that I didn't put on my report, but I'll mention it now as a wrap up here, is business retention is also part of our objective, and that is to make sure that the industry that is here now in the county stays here. So we're out visiting the current industries to make sure that they're happy and healthy. And 2 recent visits I made was both to Triangle Brick, who employ nearly 200 people. We also met with Premier Fibers in Ansonville, and again, just touching base to make sure that do they have everything they need for a successful business. At the last minute, it was suggested to maybe give you some numbers relative to jobs created since the EDC had been created. And I went to the state, and they pulled some records, and we pulled some records. And creation of jobs is somewhere south of 300 jobs in the history of the EDC. 4 major projects that many of you are familiar with, and an investment of just shy of $20 million. I can provide that report to you. These are ones that started in the county. The EDC got involved in that project, and the company ended up moving here. And because that's obviously the objective here. The EDC is dedicated to our mission. We want to work certainly with the county. We know you're considering some consultants and things relative to Raleigh and whatnot, but we are the work of the EDC goes on every day, and we look forward to continuing that. So we appreciate your time, and we are here to answer any questions.
Is there any questions for Mr. Horn or Mr. Collins at this time?
My question is somewhat similar to the same. How is it advantageous for the county to utilize you all? That's my question to you. How is that advantageous to the county as a whole?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. Number one, you don't have to oversee it. which had in the past had been somewhat of a problem in terms of having the time available to see what was going on. So that's number one. Number two, and I think this is probably the much bigger thing, is that we are able to work as a private institution. We can work however needs to be done to attract a business here. So if we've got to provide them with a parcel of land at a particular price, we can do that. It's much more difficult for the county to do something like that because of bidding processes and so forth. So I think those are probably the two biggest reasons, the advantages that we bring.
I would add the majority of EDCs in our region. I asked this very question yesterday of North Carolina Southeast. How many of the 20 counties in Southeast, how many are what I would call municipally managed, and how many are run by nonprofits? The majority, 80%, are now run by nonprofit entities, all with some municipal funding, but they maintain a relationship and a reporting back to the governmental bodies to let you know what's going on. And because we think that's key, certainly.
Right. Well, we're certainly not like the majority of the 80%, that's for sure. I guess my concerns with this is, so is it advantageous to us because we don't have to oversee it? I don't see that as being advantageous. I see that as really kind of limiting us. So as it pertains to the sales tax, that decision on how that money has been spent or will be spent or divided up in three ways was decided by individuals and not necessarily by the board, and I think that is more of a board type of situation or scenario of what to send where. That's one. Two, I'm thankful for a more detailed report. Is my mic going in and out? Can we do something about that? I'm thankful for a very, I guess, a little bit more detailed report. But I guess my concern is that our county manager who works for the board may not have as much influence as we may need him to have. Or when it comes to economic development, we're limited. I've never known for money to be invested and you don't really have much of a say, if that makes sense, right?
Mr. Sussman's a member of our board.
I understand.
As Mr. Cottle is, and another commissioner as well.
And how many members do you have on your
There are
board?
22 members of the board.
Do you have an executive board?
Yes, we do.
And then you have
We have an executive committee.
you have an executive committee, and then you have a general board.
Correct.
So basically, just with what I'm familiar with, sitting on boards, typically when you have an executive board, the executive board basically has made a decision that they want the board to finalize. Would that be correct? Or somewhat?
Not unusual, no.
Right. So meaning that by the time it gets to Mr. Sossaman, Commissioner Cottle, Commissioner Woodburn, pretty much decisions have already been made. It's just making a decision on decisions. Would that be correct?
I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but I would appreciate your feedback on that as to whether you think we bring things to you that we just
I was going to comment
rubber
that
stamp.
Commissioner Woodburn does serve on the executive committee of that organization.
Okay, good.
I was going to mention that.
Sorry, Jarvis, I left you off.
That's all right. No.
Yeah, I was just wanting to know because again, I understand it's not strange for because the county cannot fund a nonprofit. They can't grant money to a nonprofit, right? We know that. But the state legislation allows for the county to partner with a nonprofit. That is fully applicable and lawful and legal, which this is what Anson County has with the AEDC. Do you all have any intentions to remain a nonprofit or make any changes to your business model at any point?
There have not been any discussions about making any changes.
Okay. And I got one other question, I guess. You said this partnership began in 2018?
The AEDC was actually formed in 1992.
That's correct.
But but in terms of the county asking us to handle economic development, pay for the economic developer, et cetera, that started in 2018. 2018.
Okay.
2017 is when you eliminated the economic development position. And you probably know the story on all that, but and then 2018 is when we were approached by the county to take over.
Well, first of all, thank you. I've got more information about the AEDC and the history of it tonight than what I ever knew. So I did wonder about it. I had some questions nobody kind of quite knew fully. So I do appreciate your detailed.
Well, you're more than welcome, and I'm willing to come anytime. And I will say your three members here that do participate in our meetings, they do participate. They are very vocal.
Oh, good.
And that's what we want to see. We want to see that from all of our members. We have some that are more than others, but yeah, we enjoy their participation.
Mr. Elby, I would also offer that I've spent 35 years running nonprofits in my career, chambers of commerce, EDCs, and community development organizations. I can tell you this. In this particular model, each one's different. In this particular model, we do not follow what I would consider a formal model that the executive committee makes all the decisions. The executive committee hires me, the developer. The full board is kept apprised of what happens in economic development. There is a perception that there's a level of secrecy or whatever. That is done on behalf of the client and the prospect. We generally do our work quietly and not in the public forum in that regard. I know I have worked with the county manager directly, as I have with the chairman and Jarvis as well, on specific prospects and help that I needed with a prospect or a zoning question or a land question, utility question. So our board is well informed, but we do not release, because we're a private nonprofit and receiving some money from the county. We do not release a lot of our information to the public. I don't send out a press release and say, you know, hey, I'm looking for 100 acres. We go about the work quietly because of the very nature of what we do. And I just signed recently a non-disclosure statement by a prospect. They don't want their project spoken about. So we do that at the request of prospect. We're very dedicated to what we're doing. And we appreciate the support of the county very much. No doubt about that.
Back to one of your questions. One of the things that we do that certainly takes the burden off of you folks is the interaction with the North Carolina Southeast. As I mentioned, I serve there on that board. I'm in Elizabethtown quite frequently, working with them. That is to Anson's advantage of being able to do that, and I'm happy to take the time to do that whenever I need to, which is quite often these days. But that's just one example of some of the things that we do.
Okay.
Other questions?
Any other questions from the board? I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for the information you provided. Like as Mr. Elby stated, there's some good, valuable information that's been presented that a lot of these board members did not know. I kind of take for granted that me and Commissioner Woodburn and Mr. Saltzman sit in on some meetings so we understand the ins and outs, the everyday workings, but thank y'all.
One other question. I guess if it's not a problem, what was the county manager you said that I made the suggestion to turn this fully over to? I mean, if you recollect,
It was a female.
Garner.
Megan
Garner.
Garner. Thank you very much.
Megan Garner, that was her name.
Yep.
And she got the backing of the chair at the time, Anna Balcom, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember that day well when she called me and asked me to come to her office. I was somewhat in shock after what we've been through. So,
thank you.
once again, anytime, just holler. I'm happy to come back and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you for thank you for your efforts this far. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, we will move into our public addresses to the board. So I'm going to read our public address statement. There shall be a time set aside at each regular meeting of the board for public comment. Each citizen who wishes to speak during this time must sign up on a sign-up sheet prior to the start of the meeting. Each citizen shall be allowed 3 minutes for their presentation. All citizens are expected to follow proper decorum and shall not use profanity nor defamatory speech. The public is expected to remain seated except when leaving the room. Only presenters listed on the agenda or recognized by the chairman will be called to the podium to address the board. Commissioners are expected not to comment on matters brought to the board during this time, but to delay action or comment until staff has had an opportunity to research the subject matter and report necessary and relevant information to all members of the board. So at this time, we have one signed up, Mr. Art Taylor.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's been quite a while since we heard anything about the project over on Faulkner Road. And I have talked with Steve a time or two. I've talked with the inspector, Keith, and I just wondered, we still have questions. We don't know, we never hear anything. We don't know what's going on. There's still no business over there. We don't know where they're at with the Department of Transportation. We don't know where they're at with any of their building permits or their safety permits, anything. So, you know, anything that we can maybe just have brought up at a meeting. I know, like I say, the format here is just to sound off, kind of. We also have heard that it has changed, that property has changed hands at least twice. And the other question that I have, or we have, is there a point where these permits and these projects and plans that they've submitted, is there a deadline on those? Do these people have to meet these deadlines? And if so, if it changes hands, do they have to require, or will they be required to meet the new zoning standards? I mean, this thing's been going on for about a year, and we haven't heard anything from it in about 6 months. So just thought maybe y'all could look into it and maybe give us an update on what's going on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor wants to call me. He's more than welcome to.
Okay. Yes, I'm gonna ask our manager, Mr. Saltzman, and Mr. Forbes to compile the information that you need as far as where the permitting phase is, construction phase, what new ownership, all of that information, and they will get in touch with you and let you know. Thank you.
What I can do, Mr. Chairman, if I may just interject something, is I'd be glad to work with Mr. Forbes and also Mr. Addison, who's our planning director, which also includes buildings and inspections. And Mr. Taylor's right. It's my understanding from the architect who started initially with the original developer of that project that he's no longer engaged because it did change hands. And so I've known that. And so I'll work with Mr. Forbes, Mr. Addison, and we'll try to bring you your report back. We should be able to at your next meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, that concludes our public addresses to the board. So we're going to move on to our manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First thing on the agenda is something I call a citizen. It's a complaint that I received, and there's items in your agenda package relative to the Carolina composting project that's located on 109 North. And if I mistake where they are legally, Mr. Forbes, please correct me. But it's my understanding they were enjoined. An injunction was created to stop them from hauling in materials in the part that was actually permitted. When that happened, they went across 109 and started digging holes and burying materials over there. We have since told them to cease and desist. Since that started, they have entered into a consent order with the court, which gives them until sometime in April, if I remember right, to clean up what they have created in order to get back into compliance. Where you have his some information from a citizen who lives in that area, and he had an appraisal work done, and there's pictures of the trees and the stream that are on his property, the stream being fed by the runoff, if you will, from Carolina Composting, which according to Plank Road Forestry has damaged right at $19,000 worth of his trees. And his question to me was, who's going to pay for my trees? And who's going to do the reclamation of his property? So I thought I'd bring that to your attention, because I know previously several commissioners had mentioned it to me, and I believe also to Mr. Forbes. And so, I don't know if the board may have some direction. I've talked to Mr. Addison again since being a planning matter. They did not secure permits to do anything across 109 from the original facility to which they did have a permit. So that's illegal. And if they continue to dump and don't clean up, then that's going to be a matter of the courts. And talking with Mr. Forbes, my understanding, because he is the county attorney representing the Board of Commissioners, he can't represent a private citizen. So I have talked to that citizen and said my recommendation, I can't advise you because I'm not your attorney, I'm not an attorney at all, is that you probably need to seek legal counsel from a private sector here in Anson County. And he indicated to me that he would do so.
Yes, that was going to be my recommendation as well, that he seek private representation from an attorney to reclaim his damages, because one, the county did not allow them to become non-compliant, and obviously that is proven by the DEQ and the courts providing an injunction to force them to stop their operation at this time. As for the citizens, we have been monitoring this. I myself, Commissioner Mims, previously Commissioner Bricken, have attended the court hearings to follow this case to prevent this company from coming back to reapply for many other permits from this county. So at this time, they are out of compliance on the one side of the road that they did have a permit, and then they're technically illegally dumping across the road that they never had a permit for.
That is correct.
It's my understanding both of those facilities, both of those activities have been halted by injunction.
Yes. So it is going through the courts at this time, but we are following this situation and, trying to keep an eye on what's going on with it.
Right.
So.
And I'm not asking unless Mr. Forbes has some type of action the board needs to take. I was just bringing this to you as a matter of information because you need to know where it is as well as the public.
I would like to bring up one thing, Mr.
Yes.
Manager. The board did, I'm sorry, not the board, the county, we have denied him the right to dump that material into our wastewater treatment.
Correct. Because we do not know what the material is that they would be bringing because they did not keep a record of what they dumped.
Well, they won't tell anybody. That's what they're claiming.
That's right.
There's some stuff that went in there that we don't know what it was, and we're not about to find out on our dime.
That's correct. So
we don't know the origin of that substance that they have been doing whatever. So that's. I could be the culprit here because I've said no, we can't take it.
Yeah.
And Mr. Forbes agreed.
Well, what we're doing is protecting the citizens' asset in the wastewater treatment plant and not diminishing the value of that by taking an unknown source into that filtration or to the sewer plant.
That is correct.
Is there not a way that they could be required to control their runoff? I mean, that's what it appears to be the problem. If they didn't have runoff, there wouldn't be an issue. Or am I misunderstanding?
Correct. What they're doing is they're trying to reclaim this. They're gonna get those. they're trying to contain the fluids that they have there now that allegedly has killed the trees. I said allegedly because
Right.
But also this, they have to get some other method of hauling it off. And I spoke with their attorney again today, and they seem to have made that arrangement. They're hauling it somewhere. It's not going to be here. I mean,
I wasn't talking about hauling, I'm just not controlling the runoff. They say the stuff is running across the road and getting on the other person's property. They can't control that. Or they can't be required to control it.
And what they were saying in the hearing on last Monday, that they was bringing in pump trucks to pump for when the rain come, that they won't just let it run off. That they're trying to contain it, and they got, I think it was until May to get it all cleaned up and be in compliance.
Any other questions or on that?
That was the first item.
Okay. So,
Second item, I've received a request from Hugh James, who's the utilities director and amongst other things for the town of Wadesboro, concerning getting an easement from this board, which is almost like transferring property. It's down on Salisbury Street, just off of 74, and it's Ramsey Chapel, which I think has been a couple of different denominations, if you're familiar with it. If you head west on 74, take Salisbury Street, then it's just down on your right. The county had a couple of pump stations there years ago, is my understanding, and those have been transferred because of the town of Wadesboro being in the sewer business to the town. And this is a project to upgrade, and they just need a right of way to do a project, and apparently wouldn't damage it. But my recommendation is that you approve it so they could commence with their project. The other item is Mr. James, when he and I were meeting, asked if it would be appropriate for him to have the town's attorney prepare I guess it would be a fee simple deed to transfer the property, since the county transferred the ownership of the plants but not the dirt years ago. Don't know why that was done before my time.
the county attorney will gladly oversee that task, but as far as preparing deeds, that is outside my expertise, but I can have it done. Okay, it can be done. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to know.
That's okay.
I'm not preparing anything.
I'll forgive you this time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
okay. So, what's the board's pleasure on granting the easement to the town of Wadesboro?
Well, it seems like that's a twofold. It's the easement and the transfer of the land. Is that correct?
The easement first is what they're requesting tonight. I don't know how long it'll take for them to get either the town attorney or else our attorney to work together to do the transfer of property. Giving them the easement allows them to go ahead with the project. Because if they don't have the easement, then they're stopped.
That's so they can do the repairs or whatnot. That's so they can do what they need to do too.
Oh, that is correct.
Okay. That's your recommendation.
Yes.
I make a motion we do it.
Okay. Second. The easement, then.
The easement, yeah.
I'd like to know a little bit more before the deeding is done, just how much are we talking about and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for it's the easement so they can get going, I think that's something we need to go ahead and do.
Okay.
I make the motion off the county manager's recommendation for the easement, so.
I second it.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Ellaby, second by Commissioner Woodburn to grant the easement to the town of Wadesboro for their sewer line repairs. Any other discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
And so,
thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. What I'll do is, if it be your pleasure, is invite Mr. James or the town manager, Mr. Ross, to attend the next meeting, or whenever they get that process further along in terms of transfer of the real property, so they can make a presentation as to the total 100% reason why.
okay, so that sounds good. Any other comments or?
I had, if you could bear with me, two things, if I may.
Okay.
Both of them concern the town of Wadesboro, and two different operations. One is, as you know, we've lost recently a couple of folks from our animal control department, and we were in the process of seeing if we could get that the actual collection process of the animals that are at large and doing that illegally, not leased, not permitted, etc., just running wild, so to speak. and we were looking at getting another operation to take that over. That hasn't happened. So when talking to Maureen, she doesn't have, except for herself, and we can't kill her, let her work 24 hours a day, so to speak. What we need to do is go ahead and hire her, the folks, to do what she needs to do in terms of collecting the animals. And that's my recommendation.
All right, so we got a recommendation from the county manager. Did you say how many staff?
We had two,
openings.
and they both left within a week or so of each other, and so she's down to like 0 except for her and 2 part-time folks that actually work in the animal shelter.
Okay.
Oh, would that require us to have to make a motion for them to hire? Or is it because of the freeze or something, or is
I
that?
keep hearing that we've got a freeze. I think really we don't have a freeze anymore, because only positions that we're having come up now are ones that are being vacated.
I think you can make that.
Okay.
Make that. You can handle that in county manager. I don't think we should have to vote on that.
Okay, that's it. I'll get that handled tomorrow. The other item ties in with a discussion that we've had. There is a contract that exists with the town of Waitsboro that goes back a number of years. That contract is for utility services, and I think Ms. Cannon has a copy of that to bring to the board. There's a section in it that deals with termination. That contract was for a 5-year time frame, and what it was for 911 dispatch. Initially, the town would pay for, this was because the county went to the 911 dispatch services, and the town didn't have the resources apparently to take care of their portion, and so there was a agreement made, and that agreement was such that initially they would pay a certain percentage, and over that 5-year time frame the percentage would be reduced to 0. And they're at that point now. I've had a meeting with the sheriff who would like to have the town contribute to the calls of 911 dispatch, because his logic, if you will, is the fact that from their statistics, half of the calls that come into 911 dispatch are from the town of Waitsboro, or balance of them being at large to the rest of Addison County. So I have had several meetings with the town, had another one as of this afternoon, and they indicate that they have one person who's trained as a dispatcher. It's not all the license and certifications that are now required under state law, so they could try to get that done, but they don't want to pay for 2. Now, according to the contract, and I thought I had handled it 100% correctly, and I still think I do, but I'm not 100% sure. It had to be up to Mr. Forbes, I guess, and Mr. Bates, who's the town attorney, to determine, is according to it, it can be terminated with or without cause with at least a 365-day notice. And what my intent was since the payment down to 0 expires in the contract June 30 of this year, which is the end of the fiscal year, last May, which is more than 365 days, I sent an email after a meeting with Steve Harrell, who at that time was the interim town manager for Waitsboro, indicating that at the end of that, unless it was renegotiated and a new contract put in place, for a payment to go toward reducing the county's contribution through the 911 dispatch service, the town would be responsible for their portion. I've been told by the town that they don't have that, and I've also been told that even though I sent that email after meeting with the interim town manager, and then subsequently met with the incoming town manager, Wiley Ross, who is still their town manager, that this would happen, they feel like that I should have brought it to the commissioners, and the commissioners should have voted in public to do so.
Mr. Forbes, do you have an opinion on that?
If you want to now convey the authority to him to do so, you can acknowledge his writing. He was acting as an agent for the board, if the board so chooses to do that. I don't see negating his letter or your right to negate this contract because you didn't vote to tell him to do this. I believe that, did I understand what they were trying to argue?
I think you're right, and then I'll reference you to, I think it's page 3, item number 6, where it says
Number 6,
termination of agreement. The first part of that actually deals with the town notifying either the county clerk, Ms. Cannon, or me as the manager, or else the chairman. And it says that it's not perfected, which I guess consummated would be the other word, unless it goes, I guess it's consummated by this board. Now you read the second part of that paragraph, it doesn't say the same thing. It just says we could notify the town clerk, the town manager, or their mayor. And of course at the time, it was an interim town manager who I notified in writing.
Okay. So do we need to take action on this tonight, or are you saying that our action is was appropriate in I say ours, Mr. Sossman's action was appropriate because it was
You could adopt his action at any time, or you could say you did not want it to be. You could adopt it or deny it at any time. All right, but until it's denied, I believe it has manifested itself into being adopted.
I was going. I don't know if we need a motion to adopt his letter and signature on that contract. You know, terminating that contract, then we can have a vote tonight if that's what we need. So.
And my question there is, using that Latin phrase I love, nunc pro tunc, which means doing it now for then.
But you wouldn't have to do that.
Wouldn't have to do that?
What you're doing is you're acknowledging his letter. They have been noticed. They have been told that it was going to be done, and it can be done. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm just saying if that's what you want to do, you can accept that as proper notice from you. I cannot see how the town can say, oh no, y'all didn't vote on it, that's not proper notice. They've gotten notice.
Yeah.
And no one has refuted it. And to my knowledge, they haven't challenged it as not being proper before this evening.
Okay.
So you sent a letter to,
actually,
first page.
What you have on the first page.
Right, I'm looking at it. So
that's a written email that's
a year.
Date last May, May 24.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that's about 400 days notice.
Yep. So at this time, I'll make the motion that we acknowledge the manager's email as written notification, and we'll stand by that in our contract negotiations.
Second.
So, like I said, we have a motion on the floor to acknowledge the manager's email and written notification to the town to end the dispatching contract effective June 30th, 2025.
26 is what's on here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if we're adopting what the county managers told them, this says expires in 2026. If I'm reading it right.
That's right. Yep. It does say that.
Expires in 2026.
Right here.
It says 26.
The contract is for a period that would end 26.
That's when it was.
So, but we're terminating it before then. Is that
we're
what
terminating
saying?
before then. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Just want to be clear.
Yeah.
You're on target.
So, motion stands that we stand by his signature and letter written to the town. We have a second by Commissioner Gatewood. Is there any other discussion on that?
What is at stake here? Just so I know. I mean, like, are we losing something? Are we trying to gain something? I just want to know.
Since we've had that diminishing contribution from the town, which is down to 0, it's my understanding that the sheriff's operation, which includes the Office of 911 Dispatch, would need 2 new dispatchers. And I know Commissioner Mills, Chief Mills, how much would 2 additional dispatchers at our cost or their cost come to?
Sheriff, was it 100 or something thousand? With benefits?
Benefits and salary, I think Ms. Berry said it's about maybe 75 or 80,000 per person, so we're talking about $150,000 for 2, which would be salary and full benefits.
And this would be personnel to the sheriff department, technically.
Right. If I guess cut it to the chase, and is that if we pick it up, then in the next year's budget, the sheriff's got to hire 2 new dispatchers at the tune of $150,000 total.
So they would have to be in their budget if we don't have a contract as well.
That is correct.
That's what, I just want to understand it.
Okay. Any other discussion on ending the contract with the dispatch, the dispatch contract with the town of Wadesboro? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I think before we vote, don't we have to?
Was that 2 noes?
No, I didn't vote either way.
Just to clarify, a no vote is a yes vote.
Yeah, it's a board procedure, but I had some questions about vote.
I mean, a no vote as in a non-vote.
Yeah. Not vote. Well, I didn't vote either way because I wasn't sure if I had clear understanding.
Okay.
And
you voted yes. Okay. I'm just trying to reflect for the record for Ms. Cannon. So that would be unanimous. Yes. Am I right?
Did they abstain?
They did not vote.
Oh, okay.
A non-vote registers as a yes vote. Yes, correct.
I had a question before the vote, but it's okay.
I wasn't trying to.
Yeah. No, they didn't know. No one heard the question.
Okay. You have a question now? Or you good?
Votes passed.
Yes. So, okay. So you got the record. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
All I have, unless there are any questions. I've disturbed you enough.
Any other issues for the manager this time? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on. I do not have anything for the chairman's report at this time, so we're going to move straight into commissioner concerns or comments. Any commissioners with concerns?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Why haven't we seen our finance director, and what's the deal with that?
She's actually on her way back from a vacation that she left last week, so she should be at your next meeting.
I was told that the last 2 meetings. We voted 3 or 4 meetings ago to have her here.
I'll have her here.
Is that not right? I think he made a motion. I seconded it.
That is correct. From the HR manager as the finance officer.
I mean, every meeting we talk about finances, and I haven't seen that one since that decision was made. I'm kind of wondering if the board summoned you. I think it's important to show up.
I'll have her at your next meeting.
I know there were some questions after that was discussed in whatever meeting it was prior. There was some questions on compensation for being at a meeting, hours, what their hourly shifts are.
Who's compensated?
The finance director and the HR director. There were some questions through emails about.
Are we gonna compensate our DSS director here who comes?
Pretty much.
I do not believe so.
They get compensated. She comes for her salary, and she's here. Every time I look at her, I see her.
I agree.
She's a department head, and it matters for her to be here. And we don't even discuss social work every meeting. I have not come to a meeting and money wasn't on the table.
Yes, sir. I agree with you. I just know that was
the
question.
Sure we're not paying her pennies to be our finance director, so.
And I'm referencing the finance and the HR director.
Well, I'm just saying if we're going to compensate them for it, we need to compensate our other directors.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying in reference to that.
Okay. So,
I'm thinking they're in a category where they have to do what's necessary without any extra pay.
I think we both know. I think we all know that.
They're salaried exempt, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Like me, most of your department, if not all your department heads now, because of some recent changes with the IRS, they're all exempt.
So that takes care of that. I mean, any person that's in the salary, and that's the Fair Labor Standards Act. Anybody that's in the salary exempt position, they work for that salary, whether it's 8 hours a day or 15 hours a day.
It's a salary.
Yeah, that's what they agree to when they accept the position, whether they know it or not. But
that's why I don't know if they knew that because they'd never been requested to be here and they were asking questions.
Well, I think they knew that they were requested to be here 3 or 4 meetings ago. That's what I'm saying. This took place the 1st of January, I believe. I mean, I'm not trying to be harsh or hard. I'm just saying we've talked about money and finance, and it was said to have here.
Okay,
I'd like to see them here.
Mr. Saltzman,
I'll make sure they totally understand tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Well, now, Ms. Miss Ingram's here.
I know she's here. I walked past her. I had to come in to get here. I said the finance director. Y'all mentioned Miss Ingram. I know she's here. The person that is in charge of our money is not here. So if we have a finance question at a meeting, the county manager, he could answer to his best knowledge, but she's hands on with the finance. That was part of the reason why Commissioner Gatewood and I agreed to have him here.
Okay.
It's simple. It's not hard. Our director of the Parks and Recreation, I'm looking at him. He's sitting in the back. He's here.
I agree.
We have not discussed anything about the Parks and Recreation. We are guaranteed to talk about money from here until I leave this board. That's about three years and how long now? So we're going to talk about money. I'd like to see the money person here.
Okay.
If they could say yay or nay to what we're spending, we need them here to talk about when we're getting ready to spend it.
Okay. Mr. Stossman will have them here at the next meeting.
You got it. Yes, sir.
Well, they will both be in attendance. Let me just put it that way. Any other commissioner concerns?
Oh, and no school tomorrow. I got a notification for that. No school tomorrow for those that may be watching live in preparation for inclement weather. So it's going to be considered a remote learning day tomorrow.
Okay. So thank you for that. Any other commissioner concerns? All right. Hearing none, we do have one item to discuss in closed session with our attorney in reference to a legal matter. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to enter into a closed session.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Ellerby, second by Commissioner Little Reed.
Two items.
Oh, we have two items. Two items.
We heard you call her name. Or call for it. Should have just said who you
That's dedication. We're overtime.
I knew y'all were waiting. We would have been a little bit sooner.
All right, Mr. Ellerby.
I make a motion we come out of
closed session.
All right, we have a motion to exit a closed session, second by Commissioner Gatewood. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, is there any other business the board needs to handle at this time?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Gatewood, second by Commissioner Ellerby. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right.